Hello and welcome to Prospects to Pros. I am your host, Nate Tice. Today, we're going to be covering week one of college football action, who fired the first shots in the battle for QB3, who else stood out Labor Day weekend, who we're going to keep an eye on for week two of college football, and actually NFL perhaps, because this is pros and the Prospects to Pros, and maybe some rookie award selections at the end of this episode. So to lead us to the prospect promised land, it's a man who looked like Christmas came early, especially when I was texting him throughout the last week. It's Dane Brugler. How are you doing today, Dane? How are you doing after this lovely weekend? Barbecue and college football, isn't that like your two favorite things probably?
Yeah, that sums it up. Yeah, with apologies to my kids. It's the first week, Labor Day weekend, is so much fun for college football because it's 5 straight days of overreactions and things that we'll definitely regret saying a month from now. And you know what? But it's fun. Let's live it up in the moment. The Colorado discussion, we're going to get into that quite a bit. But yeah, it was a ton of fun. Just with food, football. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah, I start measuring myself maybe actually a few years being into this, I've realized, okay, let's let it loose a little bit earlier in the season. Like I always try to be guarded. So it's like, I don't want to be
right.
exposed in a couple of weeks, but it's like, whatever, they're going to find you anyway. So just let it, let it rip.
Exactly.
Some bit of sad news though, in really the scouting industry and the football industry, is Gil Brandt passed away at 91 years old. He was an absolute legend. I had the pleasure of getting to meet him once over the years, and he remembered everything about my dad as a prospect from the early 80s, which
Amazing.
Still blows my mind to this day. Dane, I know you have a relationship, a great relationship, or had one with Brandt. Anything you want to share or speak on about like a legendary person, a legendary career, and really what seems like a great man?
Oh, I mean, he was, revolutionary in scouting. You can't tell the story of the NFL without his contributions. I mean, it's why he's in the Hall of Fame. And there have been many stories written over the last week. I hope everybody reads that really show how much he's done for the league. I got to know Gil first about 10 years ago, and it got to the point where we were on the phone 15 times a week between January and April. Thousands of phone calls, just stories, information, just little nuggets, things that filled the draft guide. He loved the process so much, and he was very upset if he was not the first to receive his copy printed out and overnighted of the Beast. So that was always a priority for me once I was done. One of my favorite things about my relationship with Gil, he was unofficially in charge of sending out the invites to the actual draft to the players. And so he 20, 25 guys he looked to invite. And so he would call me after the combine and we would vet all the players. And I would tell him, yeah, no, this guy needs to be on there. He needs to be invited. Or, I'm not sure about this one. He could slip a little bit. And it was a really fun part of the process for me that I really couldn't talk about publicly until now. But we did it every year, and it was really cool. So Christian Wilkins, if you're listening, you're welcome, because you were not going to be invited, but I fought for you. You're a top 10 player on my board in that draft, 2019, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I pounded the table, convinced Gil you need to be invited, and you were there. And I think you've definitely lived up to it. So, but no, that's just one of the many memories I'll have of Gil, and everything that he brought to my scouting education. That definitely a mentor for me over the years.
Yeah, that's what he came across. And like I said, it was just one meeting for me. And that's exactly what it was. The memory and just love of the game. And it's just, and that's what it is. Like you said, love the process of it all. And that's what it is. The NFL season, college football season, the NFL draft, there is something, it's a schedule. And it's like, you really set your clock to it. And some people enjoy that. And some people complained about it. And he just seemed like he loved every minute of it, to just obsess over these guys and what they can become. Rest in peace. Honestly, everyone that I've ever talked to about him is just told stories like you just did. Incredible detail, incredible love of the game, and just we're gonna miss him. And like Ken Garrison, our producer, talked about before the show, he's a Cowboys fan. Talked about to be in the Ring of Honor for the Dallas Cowboys is saying something. And that, especially if you're just a personnel, not just say quote unquote just a personnel guy, but someone that maybe did not have the titles that a lot of other guys get into the Ring of Honor. So honestly, a legend of the game, and he will be missed. But going on to next year's draft, speaking of talking about prospects, is the quarterback 3 discussion is something that's going to really, quarterback 1 and 2 as well, it's going to hang over the season, I mean, really up until probably late April as we go through this process, because it's a good problem because there's just so many interesting and fun quarterbacks to talk about. But when you think of the quarterback 3 discussion after Labor Day weekend after week 1 of college football, who stood out to you, Dane, or who did you find interesting, or maybe who took a little tail end, who stepped back a little bit, or you have some more question marks about after the first week of college football action?
Man, this quarterback 3 conversation, it really could be just a weekly segment for us.
Yeah.
We would just kind of check in and see how the race is going. I felt better. I know it was East Carolina, but I feel better about my JJ McCarthy at quarterback 3 preseason ranking. I feel better about it now than I did, a week ago. He was dealing, ripping throws to every level. The coverage didn't matter. He was putting the ball where his guys could go make plays, showed off the athleticism. Again, it's the traits and intangibles that have me so bullish on him. And then, we'll see throughout the season, can he continue to take those positive steps? Saturday, definitely one of those positive steps for him as a passer. But we got to talk about Shedeur Sanders. I'm eager to get your take on what you saw Saturday. I think a few things are important to point out with the conversation with Shedeur Sanders right now. First, it's not like he came out of nowhere. Okay, he was highly recruited. He was 23-3 as a starter at Jackson State the last 2 years, and he was my number 6 quarterback in the rankings this summer. So it's not like he was off the radar and all of a sudden, he's someone we need to talk about this weekend. The other thing too, I think is worth mentioning out, just kind of preface the conversation about what happened, what we saw on Saturday. TCU's defense, probably one of the worst Colorado's going to see this season. That and Sean Lewis, the play caller, deserves a ton of credit. Just
That's what's made, man.
Yeah, the game plan, he was cooking. The game plan was awesome. TCU looked like they were running in circles. With all that said, Sanders was really, really impressive in his debut. And I did a film room on The Athletic that you can check out right now. I had a couple all-22 clips that I think really show why we need to take him seriously as an NFL prospect. He's got a really nice arm, both in terms of velocity and in terms of placement. We saw different types of throws on the tape. He was accurate when he was asked to drive it. He was accurate when dropping it in, some of those bucket deep shots down the field. He's really athletic, but it's not a crutch for him. It's not something that he relies on to be productive. It's more of an ace that he has in his back pocket, more so than a central part of his game. And so, and the thing that may be most impressive in a game like this, where all the hype coming in, both teams are just exchanging haymakers back and forth, it'd be so easy to get really high with your emotions or maybe even a little tight after a mistake. But to me, the most impressive thing about Sanders in that game, the poise for all 4 quarters. I mean, his heartbeat was not elevated. He was controlled. He was focused. And I mean, obviously his dad was a high level athlete. So maybe it shouldn't be a big surprise, but it was just awesome to see. And so from an evaluation standpoint, Sanders has now set the bar pretty high. And it's going to be important to see the full body of work after we get a few more tapes. I'm not sure Sanders is going to face a truly legit defense all year. And that's a criticism that we're going to say about all of these Pac-12 quarterbacks, Caleb Williams, Michael Penix, Bo Nix. But, Colorado's got Nebraska this weekend, and then they have Oregon and USC later this month, back-to-back weeks. So it's going to be a lot of fun to track his progress going forward.
Yeah, he was a very pleasant to watch, what you're saying with the accuracy, especially underneath. And this speaks to Sean Lewis, is that was the biggest worry I think everyone has with Colorado, is not only just, all the transfers that they have, is the offensive line, how it's kind of patchwork. Sean Lewis showed a great understanding of what that offensive line was. It was a lot of quick game, getting the ball out, but I thought Sanders over and over and over was showing good timing on everything. The ball in his hands, found a target and let it rip and put it with good placement. I think there was a dig throw as well. I was starting to go like, all right, you're going to push the ball a little bit. And as the game opened up a little bit and he got kind of pushed to do that, some of those guys were running wide open, which is great. And then some where he was putting some nice throws on there. The deep balls, there should have been a couple more deep balls that were completed. That would have probably even added to his fantastic stat line. What you're talking about with the kind of didn't use his athletic ability, that's actually what surprised me too, is that he was really trying not to like get into creation mode. He was like, no, I am operating from the pocket. like hell or high water. I'm sitting back here and going through my reads. So that is what I'll just be curious to see is like, can he get into that creation mode? And I would assume yes, but I just got to see it, especially what you're saying going against maybe FBS quality opponents. But yeah, he was a very pleasant surprise. I watching him operate that offense and what you're saying with the poise, they didn't have any, pre-snap penalties, procedural penalties, like as far as that stood out as like bad moment ones, where I was watching other quarterbacks with a lot more starts with offensive lines, more veteran offensive lines going through those issues. And that was surprising to me as well. They coached their asses off on both sides of the ball, but again, just want to see more. But that was as big of a first step forward in this race that any of these guys took. So that was really, really like just interesting to watch. Any other players in that game stood out to you? That Colorado TCU game, the big tight end for TCU was interesting. Jared Wiley.
Yeah.
That guy's a monster.
He's a good player. Yeah.
He's a good player. That was the one that really stood out to me. Of course, Travis Hunter. But
we got to talk about Travis Hunter, right?
I know we have to though, right? It was
even though he's not draft eligible, but I mean, what he's doing is, and look, he's a former 5-star. Yeah. Former 5-star guy. Like he was a guy that was supposed to be this good. He just happened to go to Jackson State for a year and then now at Colorado. Okay. I'm really eager to get your opinion on just the snap count and how that, like, if you have any experience seeing a guy do this, because so according to PFF, he played a total of 152 snaps against TCU. 65 on offense, 80 on defense, 7 on special teams. And there wasn't once where he was hurting his team by being gassed or not going full speed. I mean, we saw Jabril Peppers do this a little bit, all 3 phases a couple of years ago, or not even a couple of years ago, like more like almost a decade ago. Right. Chris Gamble at Ohio State was
the one.
He's the one, that the last true two-way player that I remember watching. He was a first-round pick. I've been trying to think how to contextualize how crazy it is to play 152 snaps in a game. So I went back, and 2 years ago, Penn State and Illinois played a 9 overtime game. It was the first in the history of college football to go past 7 overtimes. It's basically the game that forced the college football to change their overtime rules because it was just ridiculous.
It's not the Jared Lorenzen game against Arkansas when he was just dragging against Matt Jones. That's the one that always stands up to me. It's 7 OTs. So they didn't change it then.
The LSU A&M 7 overtime thriller. Yeah, there have been some classics for sure. But in that 9 overtime game, the player with the most snaps in that game was an offensive lineman with 106 snaps. 106. That's almost 50 fewer than what Hunter did in a 4-quarter game against TCU. So it's just, obviously it can't last the full season, right? I mean, it'll be really fascinating to see how they use him moving forward. But I mean, in your experience, do you remember seeing anything like this? Where a guy's playing almost triple-digit snaps, playing both ways, not coming off the field, and still being that effective?
Not that effective. And like usually the guy on offense is a gadget guy. It's like he's in for those. It was Deion when he was with the Cowboys, or other guys that have been like defense. It's usually defense first, or Charles Woodson. Defense first. Okay, and then you're 5-10 plays on offense. Okay, where you're absolutely getting the ball. Or you are the.
That was Jabril Peppers. Yeah, he wasn't a full-time offensive guy, but dabbled on offense.
Dozen snaps tops, and specialist role in a very gadgety type of role, and not like this where it's full-time. I don't remember it. Chris Gamble might be the only one, but again, I think they kind of rotated him on offense. So it's always a defensive first type of player. Because a little bit, who would have been in the NFL like Brown, Troy Brown. What's his name with the Patriots? Right. That's that. Yeah. That who's now a coach there. That would be one I've seen the NFL, and they actually have another guy in Jones, Marcus Jones there, who's kind of doing the same thing, DB, special teams, and sprinkling into offense. But my question to you, but to answer your question, have not really seen it to that level, other than maybe they're playing some FCS opponent to start the year. Not to that in a big game, week 1, got to have it. And I think that's kind of how he's going to be used, because I don't think it's sustainable for a whole season. I mean, he's an unbelievable athlete, but that's just 150 snaps is 150 snaps. That is a lot of bruising, and he's a fantastic athlete and everything. I actually was going to ask you, do you see him as a DB or as a receiver at this point in time? Because I know he got recruited more as a DB, but it wasn't really like the receiver part I was too negative on. I thought both aspects he was a plus player at, but I just right now in September 5th, 2023, a year and a half before he's even draft eligible, do you see him more as like a DB or receiver type just off of experience?
If we have to pick one, I think it's definitely corner. If you
Yeah.
have to pick one, but there's no reason why NFL teams won't look at him both ways and say,
Right.
a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But I think for the most part, it will be on defense. He has just a really instinctive nature to go get the ball. I mean, we
That
saw it with an
pick was
interception at the goal
unbelievable.
line. I mean, it was crazy. So yeah, this is a player that has the athletic traits, has the instincts, has the mental makeup to really be a stud at cornerback. So, and Champ Bailey did it a little bit where he played
Yeah,
both ways at Georgia.
that's
So,
right.
I think he's more in that Champ Bailey mold, where I think defensive first. But heck, I mean, I don't know that after a few more weeks, I could change my mind because
I know.
he was making plays on offense, no doubt.
Yeah, he was running fantastic routes. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable. But getting back to the QB3 race, any other quarterbacks that you want to touch on? I got like a little short list. I thought it was gonna be a short list. It turned out to be like a dozen guys.
Yeah, that's
So
you can't.
kind
Yeah,
of, yeah. I mean, do
it
you
speaks to
like?
the quarterbacks. The
It does.
potential of this quarterback class. It is really really bonkers. I was trading texts with a guy in the league this morning, and we were talking about how if you're in the NFL right now and you're a quarterback, you better be good this year because there's a lot of guys coming. It's always the case. Where if you're not good enough, teams are going to look to have an upgrade, but
Mhm.
the supply of quarterbacks coming is really really impressive. And so if Desmond Ritter, if you're guys that have a chance to snatch that job, you better do it this year. And so it will be fascinating to see. I think Michael Penix at Washington had a great day.
Yep.
Joe Milton, Tennessee, showed off that ridiculous arm.
Oh my God.
Maybe it sounds hyperbole, but it may be the most powerful arm I've ever seen.
It's
It
him and like
is that
Ryan Mallett.
impressive.
Like
It's yeah,
I'm trying to
it's it's
think.
it's crazy. It is. It's up there. Whatever it is, it's in the top three that I've ever seen. Spencer Rattler, he didn't get much help against North Carolina, but I thought he played well for the most part. Michael Pratt looked awesome at
He
Tulane.
looked great.
Yeah, he
Shout
he
out Greg
was
Rosenthal, by the way. He's Tulane grad. He's been bugging me. He's like,
nice.
"What do you think about Pratt? What do you think about Pratt?" And I was like, "All right,
Oh,
I'll watch him." He
Pratt's
looked good.
the crazy thing about Pratt is he is not a lock to be one of the first 7, 8, 9, 10
Yeah,
quarterbacks drafted. But that's the depth of this quarterback class because he
yeah,
absolutely has what it takes to be in the NFL. He against South Alabama, he was 14 of 15, four
yeah.
touchdowns. His one incompletion was a drop. So I mean, this guy, really the only thing keeping him from having a perfect day was he had a fumble on a sack where he held the ball maybe a little bit too long, but otherwise
Got
it was just
smoked.
a
Yeah,
outstanding game. Jordan Travis,
yeah.
Florida State quarterback, had a few YOLO plays that maybe give you a little pause, but there
He's
was
got a
more
little
good than
Heineke in
bad.
him. That's
Yeah,
that's what he is. He's got
he
some Heineke
does.
in him. That's
Yeah,
how I kind of compare him to.
yeah. So, but I mean, he's in the Heisman race. I mean, with everything he did, he's got Florida State, especially after
So good.
watching Clemson. He's got a chance to lead Florida State to the playoffs, especially with those weapons. We'll talk about some of those weapons later. But speaking of ACC, we got to talk about Riley Leonard, who,
I'd love
I
to.
mean, anyone who's been paying attention to prospects to pros, or just either of us, you follow us on Twitter, whatever. If you've heard us talk about these quarterbacks, we've mentioned Riley Leonard,
Mhm.
how he is a legit NFL prospect, someone in contention for that QB3 spot. He debuted, I think, at number 29 on my top 50 draft board.
That's
So, a guy that's in that late first discussion. He just led Duke to one of the biggest wins in school history Monday night over Clemson. So a lot more people know who Riley Leonard is today compared to a couple of days ago. And honestly, it wasn't even that great of a game for
No.
Riley Leonard throwing the football. I realized the bandwagon's a little more full this morning. Honestly, I was a little underwhelmed. I feel like I'm being that guy, but so and I'll be eager to see if you agree with what you saw because he
Oh
was
yeah.
awesome as a runner. That's there's no
Yeah.
question about that. But this morning I sat down, watched the tape, charted every one of his throws, and I don't know. There wasn't one pass that you can point to in that game that could get you excited.
That's
Of this,
that's where I'm at.
yeah, there were 17 completions. Of the 17 passes he completed, How many do you think were 10 yards or more in the air? 0.
Completed? I was gonna say 1 because
No, not a single one.
I know he
13
threw
of his
about 5
completions.
inside fades he missed.
Yeah,
So
well, that's it. 13 of his completions were within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. The other
yep.
4 were between 6 and 10 yards. So, not including throwaways, okay? He was 0 for 5 on attempts over 10 yards. 4 were inaccurate throws where he sailed the ball.
Yep.
1 was just really good coverage. So, I mean, 78% of Duke's passing yards came after the catch. I mean, there were a lot of dump off
Screens.
screens, design screens, wide receiver screens, quick throws, and that's all well and good. Obviously, it worked for that Duke offense, and it was enough to get the win. But yeah, basically what I'm getting at is, yeah, let's be excited about Riley Leonard. Again, pound for pound, he's one of the best athletes playing quarterback in all of college football. I mean, he was an all-state basketball player in high school, a legit triple jumper in track. So he's got the pedigree of a big-time athlete, and that manifests itself on the football field. That 44-yard touchdown that he had was just a thing of art. But let's based on what he did last year, based on the athlete and competitor we saw Monday night, again, easy to be excited about Riley Leonard. Still some key questions that he needs to answer as a passer, and we didn't get a chance to see that against Clemson.
The questions remain the same.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about him. He was my quarterback 3 going into this process, and everything I was high on him about, which is underneath accuracy and athleticism, yeah, I feel about the same.
Yeah.
And then everything that I had question marks about, whether they push the ball, whether he can stand in there, move as opposed to looking to scramble, he played exactly the same as he did last year. Again, this is week 1. That's why you have to see these guys, especially so many of these quarterbacks are so young now that we really have to see how they look in November and the bowl game and all that, just to see once they get more starts. But I totally agree with you. I had so many people text me. They're like, "Your guy stepping up. Look at him." And I was like, "Yeah, but he hasn't his success rate last night was 39%, which was lower than what Cade Klubnik finished with." And people are roasting Cade Klubnik right now,
Yeah.
who's a top recruit coming out of high school as well. But it wasn't throwing the ball. He did have some nice kind of timing throws underneath, but this is the Duke offense. It's a lot of quick game. It's a lot of screens, some movement throws, which is good for Riley Leonard. He's all good at that, but but to be an NFL guy, a guy you truly label as a first round pick, a true first round pick, is you got to complete those dig balls, the intermediate balls, over and over again, because that's what you're asked to do at the NFL level. You can't live in quick games. So, like I said, I kind of feel exactly the same on him as I did a week ago, as a month ago. It's just that he's still the same question marks I had on him kind of remain the same. Actually, in that game, were there any other Duke or Clemson players that stood out to you? I know, Barton, the left tackle, he seemed to have a fine game. Haven't watched all 22 yet. But any of the Clemson defenders or Will Shipley, the Clemson running back, anyone else that maybe stand out to you outside the quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, I did think Graham Barton played really well in pass pro. I didn't have him giving up a sack, which was good to see. He does a great job staying controlled, staying balanced in the run game. Keeps his blocks centered, very smooth in his kick slide, so he can match that edge speed. And then with his hands, he's got that strong, stubborn grip. So I thought Barton played really well. For Clemson, I mean, they got so many guys on defense, and that was, it was great to see what that Duke offense did, because they were playing a defense with 5, 6, 7, 8 future NFL guys. Ruka Rohoro, which is one of the best names in this draft to say. He was, yeah, or Rohoro.
No,
There's there's like 3 or 4 H's in it that you don't actually pronounce.
The rural juror.
Yeah, he's legit. He's a guy that didn't play football until his junior year of high school. And he was like 215 pounds. He started at receiver, then tight end. Eventually moved to the defensive line, and he's just grown into this 300-pound wrecking ball. So really good movement skills for his size. But he also has power. He can create push at the point of attack. Him and Tyler Davis in the middle were pretty good in that game. The linebackers, they were a little more inconsistent. Barrett Carter, just, he's that big time athlete, little undersized, but you sacrifice a little bit of that size for the play speed, the ability, the range, the ability to hold up in coverage. His tackling power is adequate. Put it that way.
Leonard got him once on a
Oh
scramble.
yeah. Well, and that
That's another
was
thing. That's another
he
thing
got
with
him in
Leonard's hard.
space, and
Yeah, in
then
space.
that
Yeah.
long run that he had, Carter's the one that had him in the backfield that he was actually able to get out of get out of the grasp.
I
And
think
then
it's more
Jeremiah
quickness than
Trotter.
I even gave him credit for. Like I thought he would just be
Right.
like I thought he was just a long strider once he gets to space, but he has a little he's got some wiggle to make a guy miss.
He does.
It's very
He's
surprising.
really balanced, really
Yeah,
with
his
his
contact balance. Yeah,
yeah, it's really impressive. Jeremiah Trotter, he had a few. He's a guy just in space. He's if you are facing that Clemson defense, you want to get him in space. Put it that way.
gotcha.
But he is a guy that he can get off blocks. He had that. I think it was him that he had that forced fumble
Mhm.
against Duke. That kind of could have changed things if the Clemson offense took advantage of it. But he doesn't have big time speed. Doesn't have some of the athletic traits that you look for in a first round linebacker. That's why I was a little surprised to see Trotter mentioned as a first round type of guy. I didn't see that last year or on the Duke tape. And then Nate Wiggins, the corner, who I'm super high on. He was my 12th overall player in my top 50. Did a really nice job in coverage. I think really the only time he was tested was the incompletion that I mentioned earlier, where it was
Yep.
just good coverage and it was an incomplete pass. Big time liability as a run defender. Nat showed up several times against Duke, so that's something he needs to get better at if he wants to be drafted as high as he potentially could be next April.
Yeah, that I know that's the thing is like I was really excited to watch Wiggins, and I think I only saw his number once.
Yeah.
Like where I saw him, like you said, defend the pass. Number Sheridan Jones, number 6 had like a little PBU too. But that's the thing is
Hmm.
again with Leonard that Duke offense, you don't really get to see a lot of
That's it.
digs and go balls and comebacks and everything that you maybe get to see those kind of advanced routes and feels and how they play those. So no, it was an interesting game. It's a game I'm glad sometimes to dive into the prospects early because that wouldn't have been a game if it was just NFL had me. I would not have paid much attention to, but knowing just Clemson, what Duke had, maybe just especially along the lines, especially at the quarterback position, also helps the commentators are really putting over Riley Leonard. There was like that really helps too. If you ever notice,
Yeah.
if you ever listen to Red Zone Channel too, it's like Scott Hansen goes a long way in putting players over. So that
Oh
really
yeah.
goes into people's brains, and that's what sticks. So,
That's it.
yeah,
Right.
it was no, it was a fantastic weekend, especially all
Well,
these quarterbacks. Like they all just kind of like did nice things where I'm not like, oh,
yeah.
throw them out, throw them out. It's like no, I got to keep eyes on all of them.
And obviously, they can't all keep up to this level of play throughout the
Right.
season. But one thing to keep in mind about this weekend, remember, NFL season doesn't start till this Thursday. So NFL teams, they're on the road.
They're all there.
All eyes were on. I talked to scouts that went to 2 games this weekend, 3 games this weekend, because you could. What else are you going to
Yeah.
do? You get the season. As a GM, as a director, you even as an area scout, you have a chance to really take advantage of the spread out schedule, and a lot of them do. So there was a lot of NFL eyes at these games. I think LSU, Florida State, probably the most with the future NFL talent that was on that field Sunday
Yeah.
night. So that was a really fun one to watch. I didn't expect a Florida State runaway in the second half with the way it played out, but I mean
Right.
that offense is going to be a lot of fun to watch throughout the season.
Yeah. Let's dive into that game. So, I mean, really, speaking of Florida State offense, Keon Coleman. There you go,
Yeah,
Dane. Look at you go. No, but Keon Coleman, everything you kind of made him out to be, and I mean, he just really announced himself on that stage. I mean,
that's it.
statistically, eye test, everything. But yeah, Keon Coleman was your receiver 3, I believe, or receiver 4, 3
Yeah,
4,
yeah, somewhere in there.
somewhere around
Yeah,
there. But you had a high grade on him. How about that?
yeah. He was
But
a top
he
30 guy.
Okay, yeah, top 30 guy, first round
Yeah.
pick, first round grade. Really after Marvin Harrison Jr., who Ohio State kind of had a wonky game, but it's like I'm not the stats. I know what Marvin Harrison Jr. is,
Right.
but we talk about QB3 kind of race. The receiver 2 race is going to be
Mhm.
something we keep an eye on every week this year because again, there's different flavors in this class. So Keon Coleman announced himself. What would you like about Coleman? I know we dove into him a little bit, but what did he show this weekend that kind of like had you such a high grade and maybe probably even keeping that high grade or ascending it?
Yeah, again, if you listen to Prospects of Pros, you knew about Keon Coleman
All
well in
about him.
advance. Yeah, yeah, he was. arguably the best player on the field. That's saying a lot with the amount of NFL talent that was out there. Finished with 9 catches, 122 yards, 3 touchdowns. I think you really liked how those 3 touchdowns. The first one was it's a simple slant that he
Yeah.
beat the corner to the ball, and then he
With the
made a
yak.
safety miss.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So 6'4", 215, but he's
That's it.
not just a big guy that can't
That's
move
not
out
quote
there.
unquote how he should win. But like,
Yeah,
so if they can create that way, it's like, oh boy, and you're not just a ball winner. Hell yeah.
exactly.
Let's
But
go.
he also is a ball winner.
Yes.
So when you have him single covered, he's open, right? Especially with those red zone opportunities. The second 2 touchdowns, they were both just really corner routes that he
That's right.
just, my guy's better than your guy, and use that body. You could see that basketball background.
Mhm.
And again, this goes back to last year watching Jaden Reed at Michigan State, and this other guy just kept drawing my eyes because the freaky athleticism at that size, the high upside traits, powerful, explosive. He's a guy that I think a lot of people maybe didn't know about. Like, okay, yeah, he's talented, but he actually is this good. Keon Coleman made a really strong case to be that wide receiver 2. And that's a great point because, yeah, Marvin Harrison, wide receiver 1, lock it in. Wide receiver 2, definitely a little more wide open. Malik Neighbors had a pretty quiet night for LSU. Egbuka at Ohio State also had a quiet opener. But yeah, again, like you alluded to, Ohio State breaking in a new quarterback, breaking in a brand new offensive line with those 2 new tackles, new center, and it was pretty obvious. And so Ohio State, even though it was not an exciting opener, it might take a few weeks for them to get going. That matchup they have with Notre Dame in a few weeks is going to be a lot of fun. But definitely the 2 Washington receivers
I was
I
just
really
gonna ask you
like.
about them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're both in that top 60, top 75 conversation with a
Yep.
chance to keep moving up. So yeah, this is a receiver class that it's maybe not as we don't have the no doubt about it guys in the top 10 except for Marvin Harrison Jr., but there's a lot of quality, a lot of really talented guys that are going to end up going in the first round. Just a matter of, okay, what's the order going to be by the time we get to draft day.
It's so funny too, compared to last year, was how many, kind of Smurfs were in last year's class. And then
Right,
this year, it's like
right.
there's a lot of size. There's some X's here. There's some guys with some power slot potential. So I'm all about it. I'm all
Oh
about
yeah.
this class. I mean, but I think that's why this kind of like you're saying that maybe it's not those star power other than Marvin Harrison Jr., who is like as starry as you can get as a receiver prospect. But it is a lot of useful players, but like good players. I'm starting to really like this class really come around. Like even a guy like Johnny Wilson had a good game and like
Right.
kind of, and he's more of a, round 3-ish kind of guy, round 4-ish for me
Mm-hmm.
at this point in
Same here.
time. But it's like, but he did some nice things. Like he actually looked
Yeah.
a little more fluid. It was nice. But
Where do
everything,
you see a guy like, because he's 6'7", 235, like he's very unique
yes.
as a wide receiver. Like what kind of role do you see him as? An F? Do you see him as a, like, what kind of role do you think he may be best at the next level?
I love that what you're just saying with the F but as a move around guy. It's funny.
Yeah.
It's like you would think he's an X, but no, I think I see him as a Z because you want him off ball.
Right.
So you don't want him pressed because of that height and everything. That's why I see there's not that functional strength off the ball sometimes. And also with the move around stuff, that's better against zone, which in a weirdest way, you almost got to look at him like a tight end, even though he's not. I'm not saying
Right.
he is the move tight end or anything, but how to use him. Like he's a zone beater. It's you're using him almost like Hawkinson as
Yeah.
opposed to maybe, DeAndre Hopkins. So that's kind of how I kind of picture him. I picture him as like a role playing Z, kind of number 3 upside. I don't know, like a good offense, like number 3
Hmm.
option, I should say. So yeah, FZ as opposed to X, which is just so weird. Usually 6'7", you're like X all
He's
day.
unique. Yeah,
He's
he is
very,
a
yeah,
really unique guy. It's gonna be
he
fun
is.
watching that Florida State offense the rest of the
They're
year.
awesome.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun. I
I
mean,
didn't realize the
Benson
staff,
running
their
the
offensive
ball.
line, like they have a veteran laden offensive line and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
and
So it's
obviously Mike Norvell, offensive guy, offensive
yeah,
background. That's gonna be a lot of fun to watch. I mean, speaking of tight ends, Cade Stover, who my top ranked senior,
yeah.
I know a guy you really like. He had career high 98 yards in the opener against Indiana. He looked good. He had 5 catches, all 5 went for first downs.
Oh yeah. They bootleg
19.6
the hell
yards
out
per
of them.
catch. Yeah,
They got him
no,
on the move.
exactly.
Yeah.
But I mean, they were after he breaking some tackles out
Yep.
there. I think his run blocking in particular needs to be a little bit better. It was okay, but definitely not great. He has the strength, he has the attitude to fix those issues, and I love his pedigree. I mean, he was an all-state basketball player in high school, and honestly, he cares about two things: ball and farming. That's it. He doesn't care about anything else. And so he has one of the best nicknames in college
Should have been a
football.
Badger.
Yeah, right. Farmer Gronk. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that.
No,
So
that's
this
great.
is a dude that a lot of teams are going to be interested in come draft time.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. He's one of my theories with tight ends is just draft the biggest athletes and just hope it works out. And he's kind of like that in college because he's moved around positions, right? Is that like you're saying, is that he has the want to, the strength, the athleticism to be a good blocker. He has no idea how to use his hands. So it's one of those where it's not like where it's like he's never going to figure it out. It's more like, no, that's a bet I'm willing to make because what you're saying is that he loves football. So it's just like you're hoping that he gets better. So yeah, I know he had anytime you have your tight end at Ohio State, when you look at their offense the last couple of years, and it was just the top three receivers every time getting targeted 10 plus times a game. Seeing the tight end lead the team in targets is something interesting to watch. Any week 2 games, matchups, players that you're focusing on, Dane? I'm actually very curious to hear this answer because my day-to-day I'm NFL minded. So now I got to remember that Saturdays are available as well to watch some football, much to my wife's chagrin.
Right. Well, the biggest game is going to be Texas at Alabama. That's going to be the main attraction. Quinn Ewers, the one guy maybe we didn't mention for that quarterback 3 race. He was a little underwhelming against Rice in the opener. There's no other way to put it. And here are a few numbers that I wrote down to kind of illustrate that. So take away the screens against Rice, he completed only 52% of his passes. And it's not like there were a bunch of drops in there. It was just he just didn't look on time with some of these throws. I thought he did a really nice job when he was in rhythm, and especially when they used play action. All 3 of his touchdown passes came off play action. On the non-play action passes, completed only 53% of his throws. And then the final point, and this was a concern that I wrote about over the summer, we've talked about it before, the downfield touch. It remains just wildly inconsistent. He attempted 6 passes of 20 plus yards against Rice. All 6 were incomplete. So he has an awesome arm to make those throws, especially when he's in shorts and he's in practice. But I need to see a better feel for the timing, for the trajectory, to just complete those passes against live defenses. Again, when you have to read, when you have to really, when timing is at just the most important part of the play, I just need to see it. And so, can he do it against the best defense he'll face all year in Alabama? That's something that will be fascinating to watch.
It will, and I'm completely with you that he underwhelmed me as well. That offense is a lot of 2-man routes. Sark does a really good job of adapting, and I think that's on purpose. Hey, let's limit the menu, limit the options that he can go through. And that when Quinn Ewers is, I think I always just have the misconception of his size. He's 6'2", 200-ish. If you're not an overwhelming athlete, you got to win this way. You can't be like, oh, I'll just figure it out and trick shot it. It's like, no, you have to be an assassin from the pocket. That's how he's going to have to win at the NFL level. So seeing that and seeing them limit the options and he's still kind of inconsistent, it's kind of especially with a really talented receiving room, it's kind of like, okay, there's really some alarm bells. Some alarm bells going off right now. I think initially.
And we have to keep in mind too, it's not just about Ewers as a prospect and competing for quarterback 3. Texas, they have arguably the best quarterback depth chart in the country.
Right.
I mean, everybody knows about Arch Manning and what he might become with that last name, but Malik Murphy is technically the backup. Yeah. Super, super talented. 6'5", 240, kid from California. He redshirted last year, so we just haven't seen a ton of him. But from the little I've seen, he looks legit. And I'm not saying Ewers is going to be benched anytime soon, but Sark knows what he has waiting in the wings. Right. And if that Texas offense becomes even a little bit stagnant, it'll be hard for him to not at least say, hey, what else do we have here? So that's just something to watch as we get through the next 2 months. By the time we get to Halloween, what does it look like? And it starts this Saturday against Alabama in Tuscaloosa. So a few other games definitely we want to mention. Nebraska at Colorado. Yeah, we'll see what Colorado does for an encore. Instead of being that massive underdog, they're the darlings, right?
They're the favorite. They were They were
think by
7-point underdogs to they're the favorite now.
right. That's crazy. How does Dion use that? Like that's what I want to see,
Right.
because and honestly, if you're one of the Colorado players, how do you not read your press clippings this week and see everyone talking about you, and how do you look past that? And look, Nebraska, they looked rough against Minnesota in the opener. I heard a lot of Jeff Sims hype in the summer. I'm still trying to figure out why. I mean, I
Same.
get it. He's big. He's a good athlete, but it's kind of where it ends. At least with what we've seen up to this point. So I don't know. I need to see more from Jeff Sims before we talk about him as a draftable quarterback. What else this weekend? Sam Hartman. He's actually going to face the defense with a pulse. So that's gonna be fun to see. Notre Dame's going to NC State.
Not just throwing just touchdowns every other throw against Navy. It was like, oh my god, this is reminding me of us against.
And then Tennessee State this past weekend. So what the numbers are ridiculous, but against NC State, first time he's going to face an actual defense. What's it look like? Ole Miss at Tulane. Again, Michael Pratt. Especially when you face a big time opponent. If you're a Group of 5 team. GMs, directors at the end of this year, when they say, all right, let's throw on some tape of Pratt. Oh, Ole Miss is on the schedule. First one up. Let's watch that one. It guaranteed. And so it's a crowded quarterback year, like we've talked about. You have a big stage like this, you need to play well. And so for Michael Pratt, this is going to be a big weekend for him. Oregon at Texas Tech. We'll see Bo Nix. Texas Tech, they lost to Wyoming this past week. So I'm not actually sure how good they are, but Lubbock's not an easy place to play. Yeah, that was a lot of fun for them. I mean, I didn't see Texas Tech losing that game, but hey, I mean, when you go to Laramie, you never know. But Lubbock's a tough place to play. So Oregon going down there, and look, they're more than just Bo Nix at quarterback. Some of the weapons that he has, legit guys. Running back Bucky Irving, he rushed for 137 yards in the opener on 5 carries. It was Portland State, but still 27.5 yards per carry. It's kind of crazy. Troy Franklin at receiver, he's a playmaker. He had 100 plus yards, 2 touchdowns in the opener. So definitely some good. Your Badgers, they're going out west too. Washington State.
They are. They got Wazoo. They got to avenge, and that another interesting quarterback, Cam Ward. It's just another one. Yeah, the Wisconsin players that are standing out to me the most are their 2 linebackers, and that I'm very interested. They actually look the part. So I know the Badgers, that's who I'm focusing on. Usually I'm just looking and muttering to myself about their offense. The last few years that was tough because I could tell you every play call and I would still mutter to myself. Now actually I kind of have this weird okay, I don't know anybody anymore. So yeah, all right, I could actually be a fan and a alum. So
the linebacker is the number 55. It's just a really hard name to pronounce. And then who's the other linebacker?
The one got in trouble too, so that's why I don't want to say. I know. So gotcha. I'm making sure I'm clarifying which one I anoint before. That's why I'm just grouping them both together. But really, honestly, if you watch last year, they looked like the real deal and they used them really well. So those are guys I'm most interested in. I'm glad we're bringing up Pratt a bunch though, because I'm glad I rewatched him, and it was his footwork looks tighter. He looks more comfortable throwing outside. I would see that sometimes where I could tell he wasn't comfortable throwing. So it's kind of a guy will have a really strong arm on throws they're comfortable with. And they're like, oh, I know this dig route. I throw it 100 times in practice. And then there's a concept. Okay, I have to throw the sail corner route. And okay, I'm going to loop that out there and I hope I'm right. And Pratt obviously going 14 to 15. It was just, God, just dialing it up. Yeah. That ball was zipping out of his hand. And you could see it was even on a play the flea flicker for the touchdown.
Right.
You can see his athletic ability because he flips his hips and then launches it. And it's that's not an easy ask because he's working left. It's it'd be a bootleg left where you have to flip your hips. So I know. I was happy I rewatched Pratt because he really showed out, I think. And that's a great point about the big games coming up. So,
and he's just a guy that I no matter, I don't know what his ceiling is necessarily. I don't know if he's going to start games in the NFL, but I know he's going to be on an NFL roster.
Absolutely.
He just has the makeup and the tools, baseline tools to be to be a guy that's going to win a roster spot. So,
he wins. He's tough. He's got enough arm. He's athletic enough. It's that teams are going to love that. He checks all the baseline boxes you want.
Right. Well, and it's funny because in the summer I wrote down Bailey Zappi, which of course he didn't make the active roster. So, I don't know what that says anymore, but, but just a guy that it's easy to like, because he's going to make smart decisions. He's going to keep the ball out of harm's way, and he's just might not wow you, week in, week out, snap in, snap out, but he's a guy that you can trust. And
Yep.
that's something that's pretty valuable to NFL teams on the depth chart.
It goes a long way.
Right.
They want reliability and toughness, and
Right.
that's if you can bring that, you can play for a decade. We have a new co-host that is getting preached about that with Chase Daniels.
There
So,
you go. Yeah.
all right. So moving on from we got the NFL starting up. Robert and I will be doing our awards show. I believe it will be coming out Thursday morning. So I don't want to spoil my picks, but that doesn't mean we can't ask Dane on some of his selections. So we'll do offensive rookie of the year. So Dane, right
Okay.
now, we'll start. I'm sorry, offense and defensive. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But we'll start with offensive rookie of the year. Dane, who is your selection for offensive rookie of the year? Or do you have a couple, or do you have a long shot you maybe like, or is it just chalk with maybe a name that that might be up there?
I hate going chalk, but I mean, I got to go with Bijan Robinson here.
Yeah.
There's obviously a little bit of an unknown element where we don't know exactly what the plan will be like for just usage and touches. And sometimes I hate saying this because it sounds like a cop out that, oh, well, they drafted him 8th overall, so that's all the evidence I need. But I'm just a big believer in Bijan's talent and
Right.
how it's going to translate to the pro game, especially this offense. So there is a part of me that wants to say Jahmyr Gibbs here in Detroit because he could easily have 100 targets this year. The quarterbacks are obviously interesting, but it's especially Anthony Richardson. That's a really interesting situation that could play out, and best case scenario, he could be the answer here. But I'm going to go Bijan. If we're looking for like a long shot, Dalton Kincaid, he's plus 4,000, and that's really interesting. It's hard for tight ends to win this award,
Yeah.
but we think of Kincaid as more
What's the
of
last
a.
night in that one? Was it? Did
I
Shockey win?
Shockey. I think Shockey was a.
I think that's the only
Yeah,
one that comes to my
there's
mind.
so many different there's the Pepsi Rookie of the Year award. There's the
Right.
AP.
Yeah.
I think Shockey won one of them.
Okay.
But yeah, before that, I mean, you probably have to go back to the '80s. So it's just it's not something we see often. But I mean, again, Kincaid, we've talked about it, more of a pass catcher than a true tight end.
Yep.
And again, this is a cop out, but the Bills didn't draft him in the first round, so he can make an impact 3 years from now. They need him now, and they're going to feed him early and often. So even if he doesn't have the amazing, numbers in terms of just total yards and targets, if he has 8 touchdowns, that's something that will stand out. That would be double the amount of touchdowns that Garrett Wilson had last year when he won the award. So I'm going with Bijan, but in terms of the betting odds, Kincaid's an interesting one.
That is an interesting one, especially they're already peppering him in the preseason, designing plays for him. So it's kind of like, okay, this wasn't just an idea from the personnel staff. It's like, no, the coaches wanted this too. So that's a great pick. Yeah, they're gonna feed him. I don't want to spoil my pick, but it's not gonna be too dissimilar from you. But just laying it all out. I mean, it's a really interesting class because there's quarterbacks, because there's interesting receivers too that can be on good offenses. Like, I mean, that it's an interesting offensive rookie of the year class, even if like there is one guy that might get fed to it. What was I don't think I ever heard did you have a comparison for Bijan with anybody? I know comparisons can be good sometimes and sometimes it's stupid, but did you have a good one? Because I never really had a good one that wasn't outlandish. So I was curious if you ever had one.
I'm trying to rack my brain. I don't think I ever came up with one that I really liked, or like that. It was more like you see shades of this, shades of that, but there wasn't
That's
like
where I was at.
Yeah, because I mean, who was the most popular? Like a lot of people said Saquon. I think that was just because Saquon was the most recent back taken in the top 10.
Way better vision and
tempo
than
and not
Saquon.
Quite the same athlete. But yeah. So I didn't
win LT, but it's also like comparing anyone to LT is like,
yeah,
that's like a once in a lifetime guy that I think people don't realize.
Right, exactly. So who was your comparison for him?
I didn't really have one. Like I was like there was some running like as a runner, there was, but different type of athlete again is with Jamal Charles, just as like how he kind of had that
Mm,
gliding running style, but it's, but that wasn't great because Jamal Charles is like a 4.3 guy, with a, like had real long juice. So I didn't really have a good one. Like,
yeah.
and that's a different size skill set. But that was more just style of running. I was kind of like TBD, and then I just never had to answer it. So I just kind of
I-
kept it
if you
TBD.
have to force it, then it's really not
Don't
worth it,
let it come to you.
like
Just let
because
it come to you. Yeah. I know. I used to have to do one for everybody on Bleacher Report. And I would just
ugh,
be pulling up some random names. I think
yeah.
I think I did an Ashley Lilly comp one time, and I was like, okay, that's enough for me. Um,
Shout out Hawaii. Yeah.
yeah, first round pick.
Oh yeah, yeah, it was.
All right, now moving on to defense.
Yeah.
This is a pretty interesting class.
It's
So
wide open,
I'm
right?
wide open. So I'm
Yeah.
kind of curious where you're gonna what your angle is maybe on this pick.
I think first reaction would be Will Anderson. And maybe one of the corners, like Emmanuel Forbes, a guy that got his hands on a lot of footballs in college and probably will in the NFL. I'm going to go with Will McDonald.
Oh,
And look,
nice.
I've got major questions about him as an every down player and like truly holding up as a run player and ultimately living up to being the 15th pick. I mean, I criticized the pick when it was made. And I
Oh, I remember.
still, yeah, I'm not sure it's going to work out. But in terms of like flash plays and the situation, look, you think about the Rookie of the Year award. It's all about narrative and stats, right?
Yeah.
And McDonald's going to tee off in some of these pass rush situations. He's playing for a stacked defense. He's not going to be expected to come in and be the guy who leads the team in snaps, and he's going to be more of a sub package player
Yep.
and go get the quarterback and do it for a team that's in the playoff picture. So when the
Yep.
dust settles, the voters are going to see a guy with near double digit sacks or maybe double digit sacks and helping a team reach the postseason. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if Will McDonald ends up winning this thing. So if I had to go with a more of a long shot on defense, I'll go with Brian Branch.
Nice.
Looking at some of these odds, he's plus 3,500. So pretty far down the list. It wouldn't be a surprise if he leads all rookies in interceptions, and he should have strong tackle numbers too. And remember, it's a narrative based award, and if that Lions defense takes a jump in performance, I could see voters looking at Branch and saying, "Oh well, give credit where it's due. He's helped this turnaround, and that's something that could lead him to an award like this."
I like that. He was my pick for a breakout player for the Lions. I try to avoid rookies, but I had to give it to him.
Oh yeah,
Just how they're going to use him too. I think they're going to blitz him a bunch, and I actually love that fit for where he went and how aggressive they're going to use him. I really like Brian Branch. It
oh
was
he was a
I
top
kept
20 player for me. I mean, he
yeah,
was
I got it. I was like, I kept
yeah.
comparing them to Jimmy Ward, and everyone's like, "Oh," and I was like, "No, that's a great thing. That's awesome."
Oh
I was
yeah.
like, "Just watch him in the slot. He's a monster." I love that one.
Teams really overthought him in
Yeah,
the draft
I never
process.
got
I
that.
mean, yeah, I don't know if it was just because you couldn't put an exact position next to his name, and
Yeah,
he used a little bit of this, a little bit of that kind of thing. But because
but
every
that's
scout that I
useful
talked
now.
to in the Southeast, they loved him. Like
Yeah,
all spoke. They said, "Oh, the best DB in that Alabama secondary, one of our favorite players in the draft," and then somehow he falls. It
yeah.
may be the sell to the GM, the head coach, about what his specific role was going to be. Maybe it's just a little bit unclear, and so that caused him to fall. But I mean, heck, if you're the Lions, and it's funny you think about the first four players they
Yeah,
drafted. I mean,
just shuffle them
Brian.
around and you feel better about it.
Exactly right. Brian Branch, I think, was my highest rated of the four. So it's just funny how that works.
If he went 11, I don't think anyone would have batted an eye. Everyone would be like, "Oh yeah. You guys need
I get it.
DBs?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes
Oh yeah.
sense. Yeah, okay,
It's,
cool. Yeah, I know.
right.
It's funny how that works. No, I actually think the comparison maybe for your Will McDonald pick is Hugh Douglas winning offensive or defensive rookie of the year
Mm,
back in 1995. Didn't only
wow.
started 3 games and finished with 10 sacks. So
Yeah, there
we
you
didn't
go.
have
That's a great pool.
yeah,
Jeez.
did not have snaps played back then because the NFL used to think that was a competitive advantage until they changed that like 10, 12 years ago. So thank God they did. So I can't tell you how many snaps he played, but I can tell you that he only started 3 games at that point in time. So Hugh
Interesting.
Douglas, shout out to Hugh Douglas. I think that's all we got today. Dane,
Yeah.
this was awesome. This was again, we're week 1 recap of prospects to pros. Got the award picks. Robert and I will be doing our award picks
I can't
Thursday
wait for that.
morning. I know. Hopefully I got some good ones there. Nailed a couple last year, so I'm pretty fired up about it. We'll also be doing, Robert and I, a live show on YouTube after Chiefs Lions wraps up. We'll be back on our Sunday recap pods, and Prospects of Pros will be back every Wednesday for the rest of the year and all the way probably through the draft. So make sure you check us out. Thank you all for tuning in. I'll see you guys next time.